I was at a ripe young age where being left home alone was exciting. I was like 13, and my parents had just recently started entrusting me to be home alone overnight. The only condition was I couldn't leave the house or have anyone over, but I was fine with that. Something about being able to blast my music or video games without my dad yelling at me was just exhilarating. To make things even better, it was a rainy night, which turned into a thunderstorm. I sat outside under the awning for a while, watching the thunderstorm as I like to do. I've always loved thunderstorms as they just make staying in so much more cozy. After a while of watching the storm, I moved my Xbox from my room to the downstairs den TV, my dad's huge flat screen TV with the Bose sound system. The only time I'd get to game on there was when I was home alone, and I loved it. The den was a half flight of stairs down from the living room level, and it was level with the backyard. So the backyard door was in the den. I'm describing the house in past tense because I moved out, but my parents do still live there. So I was playing Black Ops down in the den with the volume blasting. I was playing online multiplayer in a party with my friend Cody. I had some crappy old headset, which the only audio you could hear was other people in the lobby and game talking. For a 13-year-old standards, it was the perfect night. Until something interrupted my peace. The sound of the doorbell. It was past 9 o'clock by then. I told Cody the doorbell rang, and he said I should go check and see who it was. I wondered if maybe it was my parents back home early, but they had the keys so they wouldn't ring the doorbell. I hid in a spot in the game where I wouldn't get killed. Then I went upstairs to the front door asking, "Who's there?" I didn't realize how much of a mistake that would be. A male's voice on the other side said, "I need to use a phone." I didn't know what to do, so I didn't answer and went back downstairs. But it was too late. The damage was done, and I let whoever was out there know I was home. I told Cody about it, and his reaction was simply, "Yo, what the?" He agreed with me that I shouldn't open the door, but the doorbell rang again. Cody said to ignore it. That was the last time I heard the doorbell, and after a while I relaxed again, as it seemed whoever was out there had left. I can't explain the roller coaster of emotions I felt that night. One moment I'm on edge, the next I'm relaxed and back into the fantasy world of my game. And then, as I was most at ease, I heard something to my right, and when I looked, I saw the back door closing and some tall man stepping inside. It was not my dad, it was a stranger. I dropped the controller and ran for the office door, and the cord to the headset quickly ripped out of the controller. I made it to the office and slammed the door shut, and I'm by no means exaggerating when I say the second after I locked the door handle aggressively shook as the man on the other side tried opening the door. The office had two doors in it, one that led to the den and one that led to the garage. My only chance to escape the house was to go through the garage. But before even moving, I just stood still, waiting for something to happen on the other side of the door. Seconds felt like minutes. The man knocked on the door and said, "Little boy, I just need to use your phone. I was stranded out in the rain." His knocks turned to pounds as his voice got louder and angrier sounding. It gradually turned to yelling and pounding. He yelled, "Open the fucking door, you little shit," as it sounded like he was literally trying to break down the door. I had no choice but to go through the garage. I pressed the button to open the garage door, and it was so loud and slow to open that I prayed the man couldn't hear it. As soon as it was up about halfway, I crawled under and ran through the storm a few doors down to our neighbor Julian's house, who I knew well because I used to play with his dog Copper when I was little. I heard Copper barking as I rang the bell, looking back in my house, hoping not to see someone coming down the block. Julian opened the door and I ran into his arms, begging him for help as his wife came out of the kitchen in confusion. When I told them of the break-in, their demeanors instantly changed. Julian got the police on the phone and handled getting them to my parents' house. It was a long, long wait before the police were outside, and Steve and I went out to them. I told them the same thing I told Steve, and after they asked which door was unlocked, I said the garage. A couple of them went through the garage into the house, and after maybe 5 minutes, they came outside with a man in handcuffs. They made sure he didn't see my face. After he was in a police car, they asked me if I knew that man, and I said no. Of course I don't know that man. He had been telling the officers that this was his house and that I was his son. I could tell he was drunk or high or just generally crazy based on the things he was yelling and the way he was acting. He was brought to jail, and my parents had to be contacted regarding how they wished to proceed, and they pressed charges. His name was John McCarty. He got charged for, I believe, criminal trespass. It didn't make me feel any safer that that man would one day be out and know where I lived. Thankfully, it was just a random chance encounter. I don't believe he specifically targeted me or our house, so whenever he was released, he didn't come back.
When I was 14 years old, I lived with my mom, dad, 2 brothers, and my sister in a rural town in Florida. Overall, I miss living in Florida, but the one thing I don't was the constant rain. On one particular stormy Saturday night, where the thunder was so loud it shook the whole house, me and my 2 brothers had nothing to do. My sister was out at a friend's house. Me and my 2 brothers decided to play some video games to pass the time. It was only 8 after all. I remember we were playing some weird PS2 game where all the WWE wrestlers were driving cars and shooting at each other. I don't remember the name, but I remember the exact moment the power went out. I was about to kill my brother in the game when the room went completely dark, and the sound of something popping from outside echoed into the room. We assumed a fuse had blown outside on one of the power lines. We went to call for our dad, who was already getting his rain jacket on to go outside and check. Our house has 2 fuse boxes, one outside attached to the telephone pole on our lawn, and one inside. He asked me to go outside with him to aim a flashlight at the fuse box. When we were outside, he opened up the fuse box and began flicking around the different switches, hoping to reset something. He tried every switch, but the power didn't seem to come back on. He told me to wait there and to keep flicking switches while he went inside to do the same thing with the indoor fuse box. The rain was coming down hard. I just wanted to go inside as soon as possible. As I had the flashlight in my hand aimed into the fuse box, even through the sound of rain pounding down on the ground, I thought I heard something come from the woods behind our house, like a giant log cracking. I aimed the flashlight into the woods, and for maybe half a second, I thought I saw an arm reaching around from behind a tree, but as soon as the light exposed it, the arm pulled away behind the tree. I shut the fuse box, ran up the front patio, and into the house. I ran to my dad, who was tampering with the switches inside the fuse box in the closet. He entertained my claim, but he didn't seem to take what I said very seriously. He followed me outside around back where I aimed the flashlight into the woods, the same spot I saw the arm. My dad took the flashlight from me and made his way into the woods. I stayed by the back patio in total darkness. Pretty soon my dad went so deep into the woods that I couldn't see the flashlight anymore. Growing nervous, I inched my way closer to the woods, repeatedly calling out for my dad, until I found myself walking into the woods. It was hard to even hear myself think over the sound of rain pouring down on the leaves above, but I did suddenly hear footsteps not too far away. Once again, I called out for my dad and I heard him answer. This made me panic. Why, you may be wondering? Because my dad's voice came from a completely different direction than the footsteps. I ran in the direction of my dad's voice and eventually found him walking back to the house. Out of breath, I barely managed to tell him about the footsteps over in the other direction. He told me to go back inside and he'll continue to look around. And so I went inside and locked the door. Me, my brothers, and my mom all waited by the back door, expecting to see him come out of the woods any second. Eventually, we heard someone at the front door trying to open the locked door. I went over, expecting it to be my dad, but my mom stopped me and looked through the peephole. Then she screamed. She ushered me away from the door and told all of us to go upstairs, and at that same moment, my dad came back into the house through the back door. I didn't see the rest of what happened, but I heard my dad yelling at someone outside. When he came back in, he told all of us he saw someone running into the woods. I knew he was taking this seriously now. We thought it would end there, but the next morning, we found that the basement window had been smashed, and there were muddy footprints all over the basement carpet. A large wad of cash that was sitting on the basement bar was stolen, along with a few antique decorations that held some value. The scary part was that the muddy footsteps went up the stairs, but stopped there. Our basement door had a very heavy-duty lock, which may be the only thing that stopped this man from exploring the rest of our house. possibly even our bedrooms.
I never thought in a million years that anything truly horrific would ever happen to me. I'm an average person with a boring enough life that anything out of the ordinary was really out of the ordinary. This is why I was always okay with watching or listening to those creepypasta and true horror stories on YouTube. I still do watch them often, but after my own experience, these stories scared me in a whole new way. It was late at night, I'd say around 4 a.m., but I don't really know for sure, and everyone else in my house was asleep, my mother and both of my grandparents. For the past 2 months or so, we get at least one major thunderstorm per week, and it just so happened that this one decided to start earlier that night. Now, I always enjoy a good thunderstorm, especially at night when you can go sit by window and just watch the lightning, but something about the wind of them always creeped me out. Maybe the fact that it could be soft or deafening and switch between the two almost instantly. But for some reason, wind has always given me huge creeps. Now, this night's thunderstorm was one of the worst we'd had in a long time. It sounded like rocks were hitting my window all night, but I was enjoying listening to it while I browsed Reddit, as I do, when all of a sudden, the power went out. In the blink of an eye, this was kind of creepy, but I didn't really mind because I had my data and a decent charge on my phone, so I continued browsing. After a little while, I started to get tired, so I figured it was time to shut my phone off and get some sleep. I placed it on the side table next to me and rolled over to go to sleep. I guess I passed out shortly after because I don't remember anything in between the rain hammering at my window and the eerie silence of a soft wind outside. I assumed the rain stopped while I was asleep. I rolled over to get more comfortable because my side was hurting, and then I realized just how parched for water I was. I took a few minutes to try and fall back asleep again, but it didn't happen. My mouth was just too dry. I sat up, grabbed my phone, and turned on the flashlight so I could have a source of light to the kitchen and grab a glass of water and go back to bed. As I opened my bedroom door, I was smacked in the face with a blast of cold air. It was freezing in the living room. I quickly threw on a sweater and continued to the kitchen. As I was nearing it, I could hear the wind becoming louder and the temperature become colder. I reached the kitchen and walked in, grabbed a glass from the cupboard, and started to fill it with water from the tap. I took a quick glance around the kitchen and noticed something weird. The door to the patio was left open. Naturally, I was weirded out by this, and a little scared, thinking of how that could happen. I ended up rationalizing to myself that my grandfather must have left it open earlier that night and just forgot about it. I walked over to the sliding door, glanced over my shoulder out of paranoia, and slid it shut and locked it. I fast walked back to my room, just in case. I opened my door and closed it behind me and then laid back down in bed, my glass of water on my side table and flashlight still in hand. I was able to calm myself down slightly enough to turn off the flashlight and try to get some shut-eye. Something inside of me wasn't letting me forget the possibility that there might be someone in my house. I got back out of bed again and slid my chair from my desk to my door in an attempt to keep someone out. I then checked the closet again just in case. I laid back down again and kept my flashlight on as a sort of nightlight this time. Then, the most disturbing thing that's ever happened to me occurred. I felt a slight bump come from under my bed, accompanied by a creak of the bed springs. I then realized I hadn't checked under my bed like an idiot. It felt like I was going to vomit, and I leaned off the side of my bed and peered underneath. I saw the disturbing sight of an extremely unhealthily skinny woman with bloodshot eyes and yellowed teeth staring back at me. She was smiling an ungodly grin that I still can't get out of my head. She stared at me for at least 3 seconds while I was still trying to process what I was seeing before she, I swear to God, cackled like a fucking witch. At this point, my whole brain was screaming nope, and I leapt out of my bed towards my door, moved the chair as fast as possible, and sprinted down the hall to my grandparents' room.
I banged on the door as loud as I could while calling for my grandfather. He was out within seconds, and he had a gun in his hand, something he had never even mentioned having in the house. We ran to my room, him in front of my grandmother and I, and we just barely caught a glimpse of a white figure running away from the bedroom window. My grandfather took a shot, presuming as a warning to tell them to never come back. We didn't end up calling the police because we figured they wouldn't be able to do anything since we don't have security cameras or have any idea who she even was. All I can guess was that this woman was dangerously ill and saw my bedroom light on before the power went out. I have no idea what her intentions were or if she even knew what she was doing. We're getting the windows and doors in the house installed with locks sometime the next week just for safety. And all I can say is even if you live in a safe area or a trusted community, bad things still can and do happen. And you always have to take precautions against such things.